story?
Cool. Where to begin? I grew up in a loving kind of family home. Pretty good childhood in a lot of respects. I think when I got into high school and I was kind of starting to develop my own identity and just kind of figure out who I was, I think I found there were times where it was a bit of a struggle to fit into like one group or to try and be like one sort of person or another sort of person. I didn't quite feel like I fit in, and I guess with that was a little bit difficult. And I probably started to, I didn't know it at the time, but I was probably starting to get like a little bit depressed. So that would have been around year 10. And I kind of got into a group of people who, started smoking weed, and it was fun, it was cool. But yeah, I think with that, definitely there came just a decrease in motivation. So yeah, I was smoking weed a fair amount during year 10 to 12. And I was kind of just an okay student by the end of it. I got through, I graduated. And then got into uni. I wasn't too sure about what I was studying at the time, so I don't think that helped with my headspace. I was probably moderately depressed now at this point. I still had some mates at uni, it was fun. But yeah, around 2014, after I'd graduated, I'd started getting more into pills and stuff. I wasn't really in a healthy space mentally, and I was almost becoming dependent on those things to have a good time. So yeah, things kind of came to a bit of a climax when it was a party in August 2014, and I was particularly just not in a good space, kind of questioning a lot of things at the time. Decided I wanted to get really high. So I was already partially drunk, and then I had a hot box with some mates. And then some bloke I'd never met offered me a tab of something. I wasn't too sure what it was, but I thought, like, hey, like, I want to just escape and not really experience what I'm having. In hindsight, I think it was called N-bomb. But anyway, long story short, had a horrible trip. Completely lost sense of like my reality, and yeah, it kind of felt like I went to hell in this trip. So that was really shook me up, and couldn't feel my body for 3 days after that. And for a while, I thought I'd completely ruined my life in a way. Like,
How else were you impacted by like all of the drugs and all of the partying and stuff? Like, how did you feel from all of that?
Yeah, well, I think whilst I was into that scene and doing all these things, I hadn't really been doing anything to benefit my own well-being, and it was kind of a vicious cycle. And I think at that point I'd kind of just been picked up and then dropped, and I felt like all motivation, all any sense of like hope was almost gone for me in that point. It was just pretty dark times. So for about close to a year after that trip, I was just things kind of started dropping away from my life. I dropped out of uni completely. I was barely working, so most of the motivation like elements of my life had just gone out the window, and I was just almost like a vegetable. It was just a really kind of average time in my life. Like, two of my lowest points would be like in that trip, I guess. Like, I was just like, man, like the amount of regret I felt for just not taking better care of myself and getting myself to that point, I kind of just flipped. And I had a moment where, yeah, from complete despair, I just had this episode almost. Doctors refer to it as like a mixed affective state. Effectively, I had a psychotic episode, and going from down here in the depths of despair and depression, kind of flipped and went straight to like mania, which is like, yeah, it was a very interesting time, and that lasted for about 7 days. I kind of completely lost sense of reality in a way. But eventually my parents didn't know what to do, so they admitted me to a psychiatric ward in Fiona Stanley Hospital. Yeah, I think one of the lowest points was just being in that psychiatric ward. And mum and dad and my sister came in to visit me, and I was like, I want to go home with you guys, but they're like, no, John, you can't. You need to be here to get well. And it kind of dawned on me, and I was like, man, like, what have I done? I'm in a psychiatric ward. And like, the reality of what had happened actually kind of dawned on me in that moment. And yeah, that was hard. I kind of broke down, and yeah, it was a pretty low point.
So after all this had happened, it's a lot. Yeah, like you went from one extreme to another. How did you go about finding help or seeking help?
Yeah, look, it hasn't been easy, but yeah, I think it was definitely a process. And from being at that point to where I am now, it's not an overnight journey. I think psychiatrists had me on antipsychotic medication for about 6 months. I hated that because it was just numbing. Like, your feeling range goes to like this. You don't feel the highs or the lows. And yeah, it was just a very numb 6 months, but I was pretty determined to get off that because I wanted to like live and just like know what life is again. But I think when things started to change for me was when I kind of decided like I need to take responsibility for my life. So yeah, I guess I started exercising. Yeah, for me that's been kind of one of the pinnacles of like getting healthy again. And the physical and the mental are quite linked. In my own journey, I have a Christian background, so my personal faith has been a key pinnacle in getting well. Just at a practical level, I got involved in a good community. I joined like a band at my church, and that was good because I was just doing something that was outside of myself. I was volunteering my time, not wanting things in return, and just at a practical human level, that can be a good thing.
Your closest friends, do you feel like you could be vulnerable with them around the times that you were really struggling?
Yeah, well, it's an interesting one. I think it has been really key to be vulnerable. Like, I haven't actually shared this story with too many people because I guess there is that element of like, oh, what will people think? Or like, will you see me differently? But yeah, people are receptive, and I think I've shared this with my close mates, and they know my journey. They've been alongside, and that's been really beneficial. I think, yeah, the people around you are super key.